after looking at this for a little bit, I realized that without any instructions, there's really a few things that you need to know. One is that these nuts need to insert into the caster, and they need to thread all the way in. So just thread it as far as you can. Hand tight's fine, you'll see it spin a little bit, right? So once you get it that far, then you can actually insert it into the rail, these cross members. So put it in the hole, you got a nut, thread that nut on. Go hand tight. We need a 3/4 inch wrench or socket. Socket will be fine, but I'm using a wrench. So. So word to the wise, I threaded those nuts on the casters all the way out so that the flat hits the floor. Otherwise they won't stand up at all. They'll just fall over and you'll just get mad at yourself in frustration trying to put the thing together. So what I'm talking about here is that foot. So you want that twisted down all the way so that that foot is flat on the ground. You want to do that for both sides. That way, it'll stand up. Ta-da! All right, so then you can take your other piece and you can just get it started. And this is kind of where for the video, you know, you kind of slide all this in. But I've already got a 1/4 inch gap here between where this slot is and where this rail is. That's fairly significant. Spreading it out here to try and get a little closer. Now, I don't have it all the way in, but it's started. So, I'm gonna grab a pedestal and see if I can get it to go inside the first rails. And it did. Second set of rails. And now it's in. Yeah, no, not really. There we go. All right. And now we're all the way to the ground. These are still a 1/4 inch off, all the way through. So I'm moving it forward. All right. Now we're in place. So now I need to raise this up, adjust it to where I want it to be for the height, and then I can put it in my hardware. So I'm gonna take a look at that. I'll adjust the casters because right now it's kind of rocking because it's not set up the same on both the rails. All right, so started going through the assembly. There's a few things I noticed. One is this bracket with, again, no description or assembly instructions. And these bolts, that's the hex bolt. They feed through down here on the inside. So can't really see it, but I've got 3 of these already installed. And then there's the one that's still left.
Yeah, instructions would be good.
All right, so the washer situation. I decided to put a washer on the outside. There's a bracket on the inside. It's that thick 1/4 inch steel bracket, which I think is fantastic. It's very strong. We'll have some extras. I'm not sure if that was intended or not, but there's not enough to go on the inside and the outside of this bolt and in between bracket and the plate. So we'll just do with that, and I'm going to do that all the way around. So I am now working on the 90-degree swivel. This is the hardware packet that came with it. No instructions, so I'm going to kind of go by the seat of my pants and grab the camera here. So I've got the mount set up, the base, and I'm going to start setting up the swivel on the top here. So I have the first 2 bolts in. They line up with these heads, right? The hardware is a nylon nut on the inside, right? So it's a lock nut. We have some washers. So it's going to drop in bolt. The washer. Oops. Grab that again. You're gonna have to grab a wrench and I will torque all that stuff down. All right, so this is the swivel. So if I tilt it up, it's at 90 degrees, got the bolts in. So those are tightened down now. This will be the standard position, I believe. So we'll see how that goes. So this one, you can see it doesn't turn, right? This other bolt that came in the hardware kit, slap it in here, and I can just spin it all day long. Yeah, it clearly doesn't go there, but again, I just didn't know. So I'm gonna put the other 4 bolts in and get everything locked down, and then I'll come back and I'll mount the Fastback on. So I'm about to put the Fastback chassis onto the pedestal base, and there's a few things that just need to be said. First, go ahead, get these carriage bolts in. There's a video from AmeriBrade on that, and I'll just put it in a link. so you guys can watch that video. But some things that they don't talk about are the orientation of the base and the chassis. And this is kind of important because the foot can be placed in 90 degrees as you like it, in accordance to this pedestal. So in 90-degree increments, you can just rotate it around the clock and you'll end up installing it wrong if you're not paying attention. What you want is you want this knurled knob here to be perpendicular to these two knurled knobs for your tooling arms. Otherwise, you end up with some weird amalgamation of assembly that's just not going to work for you. So here, just line up the bolts. And there you go. So now everything is in place. Again, you want these perpendicular to each other, or you're not going to be able to rotate it the way that you want. It'll just be some weird aberration of what it should be. And some kind of written instructions, you can catch it on the video if you watch it closely enough, but it's really easy to miss. So just something to pay attention to. Again, perpendicular to each other, and you'll be okay. All right, so the Fastback is now mounted to the chassis. We've got it all bolted down here, all the way around. Nothing real fancy, just some wrenches and ratchets, and you're good to go. So now if I turn this, it's unlocked right now, so I should be able to tilt it onto its side, and there it is. Look at that. All right, so I just set the motor up here and I lined it up with the slots in the bracket, dropped in the first carriage bolt, and went ahead and put on a washer and a nut, and I'm going to do that with the rest. You can kind of see where everything lines up. Go to the other side here. And it's going to be the same kind of in there. I'll have to use the alignment tool to set up the actual spacing with the wheel on the front here on the arbor and where the motor is at. All right, so I'm going to install the drive wheel onto the arbor. And before I do that, there's a strip of tape that's in place. We got to remove that. Then I'll be able to put on the wheel. The arbor lock is already in place, held on here probably by this little strip of tape that needs to come off. All right, so there, the arbor lock, you can already see it in place. All right, now got my drive wheel. I have to align that notch with my arbor lock. Slide that on as far as it'll go. Make it as flush as you can get it. And then you just use the wrench. Tighten it up. There you go. Easy enough, right? So now you have to align the motor or the wheel with the Fastback itself. And the idea is that right now everything is loosely assembled with the motor, and you're gonna push the motor out until it aligns with the bracket here. So it's kind of, I don't know if we can get that on here. It's gonna be kind of tough to see. But you want this fully flush with the bracket before you tighten it down. Okay. And they make it really easy. So they've got a place for this to rest. You can push it flush against the chassis here and flush against the wheel. Okay. All right, so I've got a lot of little notes here. There's the kind of little spacer that comes with it. So one end of this is longer than the other, right? And you want the long end to go against the wheel here, and the short end to go against the chassis, kind of laying on this ledge here. And what that allows you to do is to kind of set any gap difference. So clearly that's not aligned quite where it should be. All right, so I'm gonna have to push that back a little bit. Just kind of bump it, right? So there, it's flush against the chassis side. Looks like it's flush against the wheel. I can probably turn that. And in my case, I've got just a really long ruler. And so I can set this up against here and just see if it, I've got the ruler perpendicular here against the top wheel. And if I look down here, I can see that there's a gap. So I know that it's off. I'm gonna have to adjust this a little bit. Nothing's perfect, but I'm definitely gonna have to play with this a little to get it right. So I scratched the crap out of it, setting that template up there to align the motor, but that's probably my fault. But anyway, thought I'd throw that out there. If you care about the paint finish, you might want to just be a little more careful than me. There, we're on the tail end of this installation. Got the bracket here for the VFD to mount on. My hardware kit's a little bit different than the one that they have in the AmeriBrade video. Instead of cap screws, it's just regular screws. I think it's a 7/16. So throw these in here. Washers and nuts lying around back here. For the VFD, we just need to add our bolts into the bottom. Just put them on loose, or you can slide VFD underneath the washer. Pop those up, pull the washer back. And then the VFD's got these little notches at the bottom. We'll slide right over. All those like that. So now those are in place. I'll hold on to this. If you let this go, it's going to see it'll tilt forward on its own. So just be mindful of that. Don't let it go before you get things snugged up. Cross throat, plug everything up, and that's for the motor. Just gotta line those up. locks in place. And then you just plug your VFD into the wall and she should be ready to go. So I'm gonna probably plug this in, give a test spin to make sure everything is working before I put a belt on and try and do any other additional alignment. But yeah, there she is, fully finally assembled. Looks good. And again, got the tilt. And no problems there with the cords being in the way. They don't hit anything. Looking forward to getting to use it. It's taking a little time for me to get these videos together, and more time than I care to think about. And then there's still the editing to go, but hopefully I'll get these up on online soon, and maybe it'll help somebody out.